history flows in our blood. It's not necessarily written in our books, and it will find its utterance in time, in our songs, in our stories, in our performances, and in our photographs. So what all these photos which you're looking at now, I decided to take them very recently. I shot them maybe 3 weeks ago, I think. And it was after seeing a little video on YouTube, and it was of a talent show. What you have now happening all across small towns and villages in India are talent shows, quote unquote talent shows. So you got people from areas which have never possibly had the opportunity to show off what they have, all of a sudden having social media, YouTube, UTV, and all these other mediums where they show off what they believe is beauty, what one might think is talent, so to speak. So I saw this tremendously violent video of these Punjabi young men and boys and some women also who were on stage doing all these immense tests of strength. They were beating each other with tube lights, they were breaking coconuts with their heads, taking sledgehammers to each other, and it was quite shocking actually. If you look at the video, it's called Warriors of Goja on YouTube, you'll see the judges freaking out. I mean, one of the judges almost burst into tears. So I'm watching this and I noticed that the audience loved it. The audience went crazy. People were in the aisles, they were jumping on tables. It was quite insane. So it was obviously a very different aesthetic. So today in Bangalore, when, right now I'm talking to all of you all at the NGMA. We all come from a certain background. We all come from a few generations of English education. Some of us have WD, some of us have no D. But at the same time, we do come from a certain aesthetic, a certain way of looking at the world. Not so with a lot of people who might be moving into the cities. Once again, I don't stand in judgment over different cultures or ways of looking, but this is the way our cities are today. There are certain groups who would say, I was reading an editorial recently about the rape and murder in Delhi, and people are more likely to behave badly when they are far away from their homes. Like back in the village, Mr. X is a model citizen, but when he goes to Thailand, he behaves really badly, so on and so forth. So the same thing in Bangalore, where you have such huge movements of people to our cities that people don't have much to lose, and very often they come to the city to make money, to look after their families, and keeping up with the good opinions of society aren't necessarily high on the agenda. So what you see here in these photographs is a group of village people, or small town people from near Amritsar, who have decided to do what they call a talent show. So it's a traveling group and they visit all the major cities. I photographed this in Lucknow. They've been invited to the UK. The BBC just did a film on them called The World's Greatest Show. And from being anonymous farmers from an anonymous little village, all of a sudden these people are on stage. I hear from Mr. Karanjit, who's in charge of the group, that they might be performing at Madison Square Garden soon. So to cut a long story short, what we don't like or what we are offended by very often, we don't understand. And when it comes to particularities amongst our communities, amongst people who live maybe removed from cantonment, to say it very lightly, it's easy to judge, it's easy to stand in judgment. So I like the story of Perseus and the Medusa, which is taken from mythology, which is when Perseus sees the Medusa, he can't see the Medusa. If he looks the Medusa in the eye, he turns to stone. So he holds up his shield, and in the reflection of his shield, he sees what he is most afraid of. He sees what he's most afraid of. And also, I would like to think he also sees himself in the reflection of his shield, and that enables him to take power and control over his worst fears. Thank you.
And we'll just give us 15 seconds to just rearrange ourselves, and then we'll begin the discussion, the panel discussion. Thank you very much. Can you hear me? Okay. Okay, so first, just to get reactions from you, what did you think? Did you enjoy the variety and are there any comments or any thoughts from anyone coming in the audience or any, that would like to know? Nothing? Yes.
I agreed with, I think Ryan said when he said that it shows, or probably you did, yes. You said the photographer comes out rather than what's really being talked about. So there were really individualistic voices that came out in the pictures for me. So the same city looked very, very different in each of them.
Absolutely. There's 10 sets of, there's 10 eyes on this stage right now, and each of them looks at things very uniquely and differently. And I'd like to ask a question essentially to everyone on the panel, and it really is a broad question about the impact of photography in our lives. Just to give an example, today a photograph is a method by which you can be charged and convicted with a misdemeanor like a parking offense or a traffic offense. Today a photograph is looking at you when you don't know, a camera is looking at you, and we are being photographed in various places in the city. And our relationship to being photographed and photographing is undergoing a tremendous change. We referred to it in some of the, as technology changes and allows everyone to, in a sense, capture a memory and a story. But what are your thoughts on this impact of photography on us, not just as a maker of photography and some of the challenges, we can come to that, but just the abundance of photography, the wide, large number of images that get produced and seen, and how do we make sense of just the sheer avalanche of this? What is a good photograph? What is a useless photograph? Or is a photograph not a photograph anymore? Has it become something more? Is it different things to different people? Would anyone like to take that on? Grab a mic.
Okay. Thank you, Ryan. Well, I wish I knew the answer to some of those questions, but what makes I can talk from a more personal point of view, what makes a good photograph, what makes a meaningful photograph. So, I mean, when you think about art per se, for the longest period of time, art, performance, dance, painting, all had its roots in the spiritual quest, in the sacred, if you will. So for the longest time, expression was confined, if you will, or maybe liberated to these spheres. In our country, it's the enactment of the epics and so on and so forth, in the West as well. And it's only after there was massive industrialization in the Western world and even in India that you had a more postmodern look to these things, where all of a sudden, from art being like a finger pointed at the moon, so to speak, the finger points at the other way. Finding myself, my voice, this is how I see things, so on and so forth. So for me personally, what makes a photograph more meaningful is something which has value, which has, even if it is in a documentary sense, something which has value for the for society at large, or for time as well. So I could shoot myself naked in a room till I'm blue in the face and say, this is how I feel right now, and put it out and have shows, but they might not necessarily be value in whatever sense for society. So that's what makes a meaningful photograph versus a non-meaningful one, for me at least.
It's to address another one of your questions, that is more of the whole thing of being photographed, or being a photographer. As I said, mid-90s, because of my long hair and a camera, combination of that, everybody in Bangalore thought I was an American. Okay, it wasn't in a Chinnaswamy Stadium or at Chamrajpet. I was an American. If I walked on MG Road, all those guys who hawked those chess sets would come, not anymore, you know. So that is one thing. And other thing, in Bangalore, those days people would even walk with a camera, everybody wanted to be photographed, you know. Not so much now, but I was in Gurgaon a few days ago, and cycle rickshaw guy stopped me and said, "Ek photo khicho," you know. They were stopping, and they said, "Net mein dalna," you know. So I had no clue how he would look at it, but that's the kind of a subtle shift. I think Claire was talking about, you know, the photographer is seen not as a, is not very welcome these days in Bangalore and many places, you know. So I think that has changed a lot. And I think what's a good photograph? I think it's a good photograph is something that, you know, induces an emotion in you, makes you think, you know, feel, whatever, you know, good, bad, or whatever it is, brings up a memory, you know. I think that's a good, good picture, I would say.
Is there anything then that can be called a universe? I mean, if I have not, a memory for me will be something from my, you know, a personal photograph, for example, but is that of, how does that, the personal photograph, how does that occupy this space?
No, no. Sometimes I have seen. I think Vivek also said that, you know, when people look at some pictures, some memories. You know, that's what I'm talking about. Some memories come to them.
Right.
Okay, that's what I. Yeah, it evoked something. You know, so that's what I meant.
Claire, you wanted to say something?
Yeah. What I wanted to say was, I've just come back from the Kumbh Mela, where lots of people were mostly taking my photograph, you know, and that's the amazingly democratic thing now, you know, about photography. And actually, as a photographer, you feel less intrusive because, you know, a lot of the people that were at the Kumbh Mela were from small villages, right? So I think I got photographed more than pictures taken of me, and you know, which is great. I mean, that's the changing face of photography, I think.
Okay. Vivek, any comment? Yeah, I'd like the panel to warm up a bit, and then we'll certainly.
Yeah, very quickly, I think there was a process involved in photographing things before, but due to digitalization of technology, I think it's a lot of things happens in a very subconscious or unconscious level. And I think looking at the larger picture, if somebody can curate these images, I think that there's a definite meaning which is coming out of all those cell phone pictures that people have been taking. But I feel sad about not having the ability to pre-visualize something, you know, not having the ability to narrate something, you know, to a definitive effect, you know. But otherwise, I think it's fine. I think photography is becoming more and more accessible to people. They're going into places which were sort of inaccessible to professional photographers. You know, being used as an investigative tool, being used as a tool to you know, to activate civil rights in a way. I think I've shot a lot of Instagram pictures which basically show violations, traffic violations perhaps, and even the Bangalore Traffic Police has a Facebook page where if you post a photograph of some traffic violation, it's actually considered as a case registered against the person. So suppose you take a photograph of a car parked in a no parking sign, it's actually, they're going to investigate and they're going to take action against this. So I agree with the fact that it's becoming more and more democratized, and I think that's definitely a good sign, Roy.
Yes, there were a couple of comments, yes?
If I may add a different dimension to this discussion, you referred to a photographer doing things either for commercial reasons or for personal reasons, and I think it's loud enough. Or there's a creative side to it. I want to go on slightly further and say and ask whether photographers and photography can be used as an agent of change. And there are two issues here. One is reach. We saw some excellent photographs today, but I've never seen them before. So even if you've taken photographs which can help change or which can bring certain things to your notice or which can create a certain emotion in you, how do you increase the reach? That's one. And the second thing is there a message which can be sent through the photographs? Because I think that would really take the photographer to a totally different plane, and this need not be in lieu of everything else. It could be in addition to what they are doing now in any case. Just wanted the reaction of the panelists on that.
Yeah, I can probably speak about in a photojournalist point of view. See, it's becoming more and more difficult for us to publish images which are pertinent. For example, if I have to publish photographs of of a story in a landfill, there's a lot of things that goes into it while it is considered to be published. For example, they look at advertisers for the particular magazine. So, the advertisers might be selling perhaps a Rolex watch, and he wouldn't like a Rolex watch ad to be next to a pathetic photograph of a landfill. There's a lot of issues. It's not just editorial content we're talking about. We're also talking about how the industry works. We're talking about the publishing industry as a business, right? So it's a very, very uphill task for us photojournalists, and we are definitely trying to work at the ground level to make important stories. We're trying to make these stories to be heard at a longer distance, to reach out to more and more people, but it is difficult. But there is this new media, the social media we're talking about. So we have avenues to share on Facebook or Twitter without having to have a constraint of a photo editor in between, which is great. But otherwise, I think it is definitely an uphill task, and part of our job involves educating photo editors and editors to to realize the importance of carrying such stories. Yeah, so I mean, we're trying our best, but of course it is a challenge. Yes.
So what you're saying is that the system itself
Right.
limits the distribution.
True.
However, I'll just borrow and then I'll give it to you. However, it is true that more and more people are, as somebody mentioned, I think you mentioned, you have a wonderful camera which is also a phone. Okay, so as many people do now in their pockets, the best camera that is with you is the one that's actually with you, the best camera in the world. Which camera should I use, or which camera should I buy? The best camera is the one that is on you, that you can take the picture with. And so then that makes it possible for sure to find new distribution, new ways to create an audience. I think that's what you're asking for. But then once that audience is created, what happens next so that change comes about? Ryan, do you want to?
Yeah. I'll be very brief. Today I got an email from a teacher in Wisconsin who had read an essay I had written on my blog on photography, and they're making it a part of their syllabus. In the last week, I've got maybe 7 or 8 emails from people who found a blog I wrote on the Tamil Brahmin community with photographs to be especially poignant in their lives. And so for me, even though the industry I find to be, like Vivek says, very difficult to work in now, you don't make too much money doing photography, so on and so forth, there's always the opportunity to create your own avenue to share. You have the internet, you have blogs, you have email, and if you want to do something, you always can. And work stands on its own 2 feet, I believe. And in time, if it comes from a place of integrity and it's something of value, it finds its audience, it finds its expression, if you will.
A few years ago, I published a book called Unsung. It's on the unsung heroes of India. It was published in 2007, worked on it, it took about 4 years to do. I won't go to the details because it's another symposium in itself. But that book, I was able to sell 6,000 copies of it. It came up, it happened because of corporate support, no strings attached corporate support. And it helped raise over 85 lakhs that I know of to the causes of the heroes featured in the book. It became a lecture series at IIM Bangalore. And because of the book, it inspired two individuals to give me a pretty good grant to do the second book. The book